All right, we're working on section 5D, and we're looking at charts and graphs. And so when you're looking at charts and graphs, you want to pay attention to what we call the x-axis, excuse me, and the y-axis. And so here, the x-axis is in years, and here's the y-axis. And here, let's read the story. In this figure, the graphs from top to bottom represent individuals who are not high school graduates, who are high school graduates, who have some college experience or an associate's degree, and who have bachelor's degrees or higher in that order. So it goes in that order. Let's answer the question. Briefly describe how the unemployment rate has changed with time over the period shown in the figure. Has the trend and the differences between educational attainment level remained consistent during this time? Explain and choose the correct answer. And so it looks like the unemployment rate varies over time, but the differences between each one of the groups roughly remains the same. The spacing between the groups remains the same. So when they ask about the differences, when you're looking at the picture, you're just talking about the spacing between the groups remains roughly the same. The unemployment rate varies over the time period. The trend and differences between educational attainment level has remained relatively consistent over the time period, so the differences look constant. And that more education leads to a smaller unemployment rate, since for each year a higher level of education always has an unemployment rate less than the education levels below it. For 2006, approximately how much more likely was a high school dropout to be unemployed than a worker with a bachelor's degree? High school. So the year is 2006. So 2006, it's roughly 3% for the blue, and here it's roughly 7%. So we would say 2 to 3 times. So it's 3% versus 7%. 2 to 3 times as likely. Let's make this larger. Consider the data displayed in the figure. So what are we talking about? Country and mean score. This is test scores with girls and boys. Which group scored higher on the test? Boys in country D or girls in country F? All right, so boys in country D, let's see, this is multiple choice. Okay, great. So then there's 10 is needed. So boys in country D scored about it looks like 510, halfway between. Okay, so 510. Girls in country F look like they scored about halfway between, so 530. So they score more. Right? So the girls in country F scored higher on the test. So girls in F. Which group score higher on the test? Boys in country B or girls in country E? Boys in country B score, it looks like about 550. Girls in country E score, girls in country E scored about 540. And so then it would be, in this case, so 550, 540, boys in B. Let's increase the view. Here we have a stacked line chart. So this here tells you what's going on with the men, and this spacing tells you what's going on with the women. Okay, so for instance, here in 2000, the men, there were about 500,000. This is in 500,000, I think. Number of degrees in hundreds of thousands. So 500,000, and in here, it's the total is 1,200,000, which means that this distance has to be another 700,000 on top of the 500,000. That's why they call it stacked. Estimate the number of college degrees awarded to men and to women separately in 1990. So 1990, it looks like somewhere between 500,000 and 600,000 and for men. And then for women, it looks like it goes up to about 1,100,000, which is 1.1 million. So it looks like another 550,000, right? So these are multiple choice. So let's see which one fits that the best. It looks like this one, right? For the men, a little between 500 and 600,000. For the women, if you're going to get 1,100,000, which is 1.1 million, it needs to be roughly the same. About when were the number of bachelor's degrees equal for males and females? Well, that is roughly here, where this distance and this distance are the same, roughly. So that would be 1990. And during which decade did the number of degrees increase the most? And it looks like when you're asking about when did the degrees increase the most, you're looking for when is there the most increase, or when was the slope the highest, right? And so both of these are sloping upwards pretty quickly, and so we would probably say the 60s. The 60s. Do you think the stack plot is an effective way to display the data? Well, this is not so bad. It's just hard to compare. Like if you looked here, right, you might be able to see that there were more men than women getting degrees because this is higher than this, but we don't know exactly the amount without having to subtract. So it's not as good, if you're comparing, it's not as good as a bar graph, right? So we would say this is okay, but it's not as good as a bar graph. Let's see what choice that is. The stacked line chart makes it easy to see the changing total, but a double bar graph, one bar for males and one for females, will make it easier to do the comparison. Let's zoom in a little bit. The figure shows projections of age distribution of the U.S. population from 2010 to 2050. Use this graph to answer the following questions. What percentage of the population was over 65 in 2010? Here's 2010. Over 65 is this group right here. This is 15. So this looks like it's roughly about 13. I think my math lab might even take 14. What percentage of the population is projected to be over 65 in 2050? 2050 is this year. When you go to these people, over 65 looks about like 20. Describe the change in 45 to 54 from 2010 to 2050. Where is this 45 to 54? Oh, this is this yellow group. It's hard to see this yellow group. So here from 2010, they were at roughly 14%. And in 2000, what's the other year? 2050, it looks like they've gone down a lot. So they're here. That's just hard to see. It looks like they're roughly 10%, but it drops. Yeah, the population, the group decreases in percentage as a percentage of the population. Net grain production is the difference between the amounts of grain a country produces and the amount of grain its citizens consume. It is positive if the country produces more than it consumes, and negative if the country consumes more than it produces. That means it needs more. The figure shows the net grain production of 4 countries in 1990 and projected for 2030. Complete parts A through C. Which of the 4 countries had to import grains to meet its needs? So they needed a lot more than what they had. So it looks like 1990, right? So when it's under, there's a little bit under. So India needed some. Did China need some? Did it have a negative net gain? China, it did, because this is negative. And then definitely Russia needed some in 1990. Which of the 4 countries are expected to import grain to meet needs in 2030? So 2030 is now the purple graph. And again, it's the same 3 countries. It's this one, and this one. So Russia, China, and India. Given that India and China are the world's 2 most populous countries, they have the most people, what does the graph tell you about how world agriculture will have to change between now and 2030? Yeah, we'll need to increase agriculture. Consider the accompanying figure. Notice that the red segment of the bar, of the second bar from the top, starts farther right than the red segment of the top bar. What does this fact tell us? Let's see, we have the figure. Oh, okay. So what are we talking about here? The undergraduate budget and what you're spending it on, okay, and what part of the budget gets spent on certain things. Do we have the colors here? The colors are, let's see if they show us the colors. So wait, let's see if they show us the colors on the next page. They do. Okay. So then red is other expenses. All right. So then it seems like other expenses, so it's this bar versus this bar. Other expenses looks like it stays the same, or it goes down a little bit, $119. And it's because this stuff has gotten more expensive. So this stuff has pushed this stuff to the right and become a larger percentage of the total amount that you're going to spend. Let's see if we can find that in the answer. It tells us that the sum of tuition and fees plus room and board is greater at the public 4-year institution than at the public 2-year institution because the 2 segments extend farther out in the 4-year in-state institution chart. Consider the figure below. According to the graph, what is the per capita energy use in Oregon? In Oregon, here's Oregon. It's 2233. Let's see here. That puts you between 2,000 and 29.99. So we're talking about It's not between 3,000. No. Okay, it could be this or this one, not this one. Oregon's per capita energy consumption is between 2,000 and 29.99 gallons of oil equivalent, because its gallons of oil equivalent amount on the figure falls in this range. That looks right. Let's see. Oil's per capita energy consumption is between this, because it is in the Northwest region. That's not the reason. Use the accompanying figure to complete parts A and B below. Within a group of 500 typical college students, approximately how many have loans to help pay for their college education? What percentage of people have loans to pay for their college education? All right, so we got a lot going on here. Okay, so we got a percentage here. Most students feel that their work is relevant. Okay. We're looking for pay for loans, right? Use loans to pay for their education. Let's see here. Let's zoom in. Frequently felt inspired to think in new ways. Texted in class. Partied. All right, financial aid. 19% have major concerns. 37% felt their jobs interfered with other schoolwork. 43% took advantage of financial aid advising, and 58% took out loans. Oh, 58% took out loans. So out of 500 people, 58% of them would take out loans. So that's 290 people. Can you conclude that some students who are satisfied with their coursework also texted in class? Okay, satisfied with their coursework, text in class. Who was satisfied with their coursework? Let's see here. I think we saw that earlier. Satisfied with their coursework. Okay, let's see here. 10. Relevance in the future. Is that it? Could this be it here? 60. Let's see what number that is. Is that 62%? Have lasting effects. So is that maybe it's that 62% are satisfied with the relevance of their coursework. Maybe that's it. So we got 62% of those people. And there was something about texting in class. Who texted in class? 79% text in class. Right, so if 62% of the people are satisfied and 79% of the people texting in class, then it seems like there's a majority of people who are doing both. And so that means that the people who are texting in class and relevant coursework are more than 50%. See here. So then, can you conclude that some students who are satisfied with the coursework also text in class? Yeah. So we'll say yes, since more than half in class and more than half. So since more than half text in class and more than half were satisfied with the coursework, the two groups have to overlap. So yeah, there are more people. There are some people who do both. Hope it helps.